She was 7 months pregnant, standing barefoot in a $40 million penthouse, staring at a photo of her husband with another woman on his arm. At the gala, he told her she was too fat to attend. He called her a liability. He erased her name from every account, every property, every public record of their life together. He brought his socialite mistress to every event for 9 months while his pregnant wife decorated the nursery alone. And when she finally fought back, he hired the most ruthless divorce attorney in Chicago, fabricated a psychiatric evaluation from a doctor she had never met, and filed for sole custody of her unborn child. He froze her bank accounts. She had $212 to her name. He had $4 billion. But here is what a billionaire with $4 billion did not count on. His wife was not just a wife. She was a former investigative journalist, the same woman who once took down a corrupt politician by following the money. And she was about to follow his. What she uncovered in his locked filing cabinet would expose $38 million in hidden assets, destroy his career, end his mistress, and disbar his attorney. But first, she had to survive, because the night everything collapsed, she went into premature labor while his lawyers tried to force their way into the delivery room. This is the story of a woman who was told she was nothing and proved she was everything. Stay until the end, because the moment she walks into that gala in an emerald dress will be the most satisfying 2 minutes you have heard all year. This story will remind you of two truths you should never forget. Your voice is not a liability. It is the most powerful thing you own. And when someone hides you, it was never about your weakness. It was always about their fear of your strength. Now, family, if you are ready for this journey, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been made to feel invisible by someone who was supposed to love you? Like this video, if you believe every woman deserves to be seen, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Because somewhere right now, a woman is sitting in her own golden cage, thinking she has nothing. Let us remind her she has everything. Let us get into it. She stood in the bathroom of a penthouse she did not own, holding a phone that showed her a life she was no longer part of. 7 months pregnant, bare feet on heated marble, one hand on the curve of her belly, where her daughter turned and kicked, the other hand gripping a phone so tightly the screen protector cracked at the corner. The photo had been posted 43 minutes ago by Chicago Style magazine. High resolution, perfect lighting, the kind of image that gets shared 10,000 times before breakfast. Richard Weston III stood on a red carpet in a black tuxedo. His jaw was sharp. His smile was practiced. His silver watch caught the flash from a dozen cameras, and on his arm, pressed close enough that their shadows merged into one, was a woman named Sloane Fairchild, blonde, slim, radiant in a white beaded gown that caught the light like crushed diamonds. Her hand rested on Richard's forearm with the easy confidence of someone who belonged there. The caption underneath the photo read, "Weston Crown, CEO, and partner Sloane Fairchild light up the Chicago Museum Gala." Partner. Maggie read the word 3 times. Each time it cut a little deeper. She scrolled down. There were more photos, 12 in total. In 11 of them, Sloane was by Richard's side, laughing, touching his shoulder, leaning in to whisper something that made him smile. In one photo, his hand rested on the small of her back, fingers spread wide, possessive and proud. There was no photo of Maggie. There had not been a photo of Maggie at any of his events in 9 months. 9 months. The exact length of a pregnancy. The exact length of time it had taken him to replace her completely. She heard him in the bedroom, the clink of cufflinks against the dresser, the hiss of a tie being pulled through a collar. She walked out of the bathroom and stood in the doorway. He was facing the mirror, knotting his tie with the mechanical precision of a man who had done it 10,000 times. "Can we talk about this?" she said. She held up the phone. The screen glowed between them like a small accusation. He did not turn around. "Talk about what?" "This." She stepped closer. "You and her, at the gala. You told me it was a bored dinner. You said spouses were not invited." Richard glanced at the phone in the mirror's reflection. His hands did not stop moving on the tie. "Sloan is the face investors expect, Margaret. She represents a key partnership. It is about optics." "Optics?" "Yes, optics." He smoothed his tie, adjusted the knot. "You are 7 months pregnant. You want to waddle down a red carpet and embarrass the brand?" The word waddle went through her like a blade. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I am your wife." He turned then, finally looked at her. His eyes moved from her face to her belly, and back again, and in that fraction of a second she saw it. The assessment, the calculation, the quiet, clinical disappointment. "And I am providing for you," he said. "For the baby, for all of this." He gestured around the penthouse. 2,200 square feet of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Marble countertops, a nursery she had decorated alone in soft grays and whites, with a mobile that played a lullaby when you wound it up. Everything beautiful, everything expensive, everything cold. He picked up his briefcase, crossed the room, kissed her forehead the way you would pat a child who had asked a question you did not feel like answering. "I have a meeting. We can talk tonight." They would not talk tonight. She knew this the way she knew the weather pattern of her own marriage. He would come home late or not at all. He would text business dinner from whatever restaurant Sloan had chosen, and Maggie would be here, in this beautiful prison, alone with a baby who was not born yet, and a silence so heavy it pressed against her lungs. The front door closed. The lock clicked. The penthouse settled into its usual quiet. Maggie stood there for a long time. Then she looked down at her belly and spoke softly. "It is okay, little one. Mama is figuring this out." Have you ever been erased by the person who swore to love you? Have you ever watched someone parade a replacement in public while you raised their child in private? If you have ever been told you are too much of one thing and not enough of another, this story is for you. Stay with me, because what Maggie does next will remind you who you really are. But first, family, hit that subscribe button right now. You do not want to miss what is coming. Maggie Sinclair did not grow up in a penthouse. She grew up in Champaign, Illinois, in a house with a chain-link fence and a backyard garden where her father grew lilies. Her dad, Frank Sinclair, was a mechanic. He came home every night with grease under his fingernails and a habit of singing off-key while he washed his hands at the kitchen sink. Her mother, Diane, was the toughest woman Maggie had ever known. Diane had put herself through law school at night while raising 2 kids and working days as a court clerk. She became a family court judge in Champaign County and spent 26 years on the bench, watching marriages fall apart and deciding who got the children. She retired at 60 with a small pension, a reputation for fairness, and absolutely no tolerance for nonsense. Maggie inherited her father's warmth and her mother's steel. She was the first person in her family to attend Northwestern University. Full scholarship. She graduated with honors, joined the Chicago Tribune as a Metro reporter, and within 3 years broke a story that took down a corrupt alderman named Gerald Graves, who had been funneling city contracts to his brother-in-law's construction company. Maggie followed the money. She knocked on doors that did not want to be opened. She sat in courtrooms and parking lots and diners with nervous sources who whispered things they were afraid to say out loud. The story ran as a 5-part series. Graves resigned. His brother-in-law was indicted. Maggie won a regional press award at 27. She was sharp, fearless, going places. Then she met Richard Weston III. It happened at a charity fundraiser at the Drake Hotel. Maggie was covering the event for the Tribune. Richard had bought a table for $50,000. She noticed him the way you notice a weather system moving in. He was tall, dark-haired, precise in every movement. People parted when he walked through the room, not because he demanded it, but because his presence seemed to rearrange the air. After the speeches, he found her at the bar. "You are the reporter who took down Alderman Graves." She looked up from her notebook. "Guilty." That took guts. He signaled the bartender. "Let me buy you a drink." She should have said no. She knew it even then, somewhere in the back of her mind where her mother's voice lived. He was polished in a way that felt foreign to her. The suit was not just expensive, it was the kind of expensive that did not need to announce itself. The watch on his wrist cost more than her car. People moved around him like he had his own gravitational field. But he was charming, not in the flashy way of men who know they are charming, in the quiet way of men who make you feel like you are the only person in the room worth talking to. He asked her questions about her work. He listened. He remembered details. When she told him about the alderman story, his eyes sharpened with genuine interest. "You followed the money," he said. "Most reporters follow the scandal. You followed the money. That is rare." She felt something warm spread through her chest. Recognition from a man whose world was built entirely on money. They exchanged numbers. He called the next day. The courtship was fast and consuming. 6 months of private dinners at restaurants where the menus had no prices. Weekend trips to Lake Geneva. Flowers delivered to the newsroom every Monday. Not roses, lilies. She had mentioned once, casually, that her father grew them. Richard remembered. She fell in love the way smart women sometimes do. Not because she was naive, but because she wanted to believe that a man who listened that carefully must also care that deeply. And then she got pregnant. She told him on a Sunday morning in his kitchen. She had practiced the words in the mirror. She was terrified. His face went blank for exactly 3 seconds. She counted them. 1, 2, 3. Then he set down his coffee cup and said, "We will handle this." She thought he meant together. He meant strategically. Within a week, his mother called. Maggie had never spoken to Catherine Weston before. Catherine's voice was pleasant but cold, like a letter from a law firm printed on expensive stationery. "The Weston family does not have illegitimate children, Margaret. Richard will propose. You will accept. The wedding will be small and tasteful. Welcome to the family." There was no warmth in it, no congratulations, no questions about how Maggie felt or what she wanted. It was a transaction, a problem being managed. The proposal came 2 weeks later, public, in front of 200 colleagues at a Weston Crown Company retreat. A 6-carat diamond ring in a velvet box. Richard down on one knee, cameras flashing. She said yes because she was pregnant and in love and standing in front of 200 strangers, and what else could she say? The wedding was 3 months later, small and tasteful as Catherine had prescribed. His family attended, but barely spoke to her. His cousin's wife looked at Maggie's dress and said, "How sweet," in a tone that meant, "How cheap." Her parents came. Her father wore a rented suit and kept tugging at the collar. Her mother sat through the ceremony with the face she used on the bench when she had already made her ruling and was waiting for the lawyers to catch up. After the wedding, Richard suggested she leave the Tribune. You do not need to work anymore, Margaret. Focus on us. Focus on the baby. She was exhausted and nauseous and still in love. She agreed, but the cage closed fast. Her byline disappeared. Her contacts at the paper dried up. Her name was removed from the joint checking account. For simplicity, Richard's financial advisor said. Just one signatory. Standard practice. She was not on the penthouse lease. It was held by a Weston Crown corporate entity. She did not own the car she drove. It was a company vehicle. She had no income, no credit history in her married name, no professional identity. In 6 months, Margaret Sinclair, award-winning investigative journalist, became Margaret Weston, a name that appeared on exactly nothing. She was completely dependent on a man who had married her because his mother told him to. And she was 7 months pregnant. The day after she saw the Gala photos, Maggie did something she had not done in over a year. She investigated. It started small. She was sitting in the living room while the penthouse hummed its expensive silence around her, and she opened Richard's shared calendar on the family tablet. He had given her access months ago, a gesture that seemed generous at the time, but now she understood was simply careless. He never expected her to check. She checked. 3 nights in the previous week were marked board dinner. She pulled up the Weston Crown corporate website and found the board meeting schedule. The board had met once that week, on Tuesday. The other 2 board dinners were on Thursday and Saturday. She checked the credit card statements next. Richard's personal card was linked to an app she could still access because he had never thought to remove her. 2 charges at the Peninsula Hotel, Thursday night and Saturday night, $1,200 each. On nights he told her he was in New York. He was not in New York. He was 11 miles away in a hotel suite with Sloane. Maggie felt something cold and precise settle over her. Not rage, not sadness, something older, something she had built in newsrooms over 5 years of chasing stories. The instinct to document, the discipline to gather evidence before reacting. She opened a new email account on her laptop, magsinclair.backup@gmail. She screenshotted the calendar entries, the credit card charges, the timestamps. She forwarded everything to the backup account. She went to Richard's closet, found the navy blazer he had worn last Tuesday. In the inside pocket, she found a second phone, a prepaid, the kind you buy at a gas station. She did not open it. She photographed it in the pocket, noted the date and time, and put it back exactly as she had found it. Evidence documentation. Habit from her reporting days. You never disturb the scene. You record it. She searched Sloane Fairchild's social media next. The profile was public. Instagram. Hundreds of posts. Glamorous shots on yachts, rooftops, first-class airplane cabins, and scattered through the curated perfection. Like Easter eggs for anyone paying attention, were photos with Richard, a dinner at a restaurant she recognized, the roof deck at Soho House, a ski lift in Aspen with 2 sets of poles planted in the snow, all dated over the past 9 months. 9 months. The word kept circling back. He had been replacing her for the entire pregnancy. From the moment the baby became real, she became invisible. She sat in the dark nursery, the room she had decorated alone because Richard said he was too busy. The crib she had assembled using a YouTube tutorial because he was at a conference. The tiny clothes she had washed and folded and placed in drawers with sachets of lavender. Something cracked inside her chest. The kind of crack that is not dramatic. It is quiet, like a foundation shifting, like the first hairline fracture in a wall that will eventually come down, but she did not fall apart. Not yet. She opened her laptop and typed a note to herself. 3 sentences. Document everything Trust no one. Protect the baby. She closed the laptop, put her hand on her belly, felt her daughter kick. I know, she whispered. Mama is working on it. Over the next 3 days, Maggie gathered evidence with the methodical patience of the journalist she still was underneath the penthouse and the pregnancy and the silence. She tracked Richard's movements through the shared calendar and cross-referenced them with credit card charges. She cataloged every discrepancy. Every lie had a receipt. She screenshotted Sloane's social media posts and archived them using a web tool in case they were deleted later. She saved each one with the date and a note about what Richard had told her he was doing that night. She recorded the second phone's location in his blazer 3 more times, always in the same pocket. Always after a night he claimed to be elsewhere. She did all of this between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., sitting at the kitchen counter in the dark while Richard slept in the guest room. Her hands shook every time. The baby pressed against her ribs. She drank decaf tea and kept going. By Wednesday, she had a folder in her backup email with 47 pieces of documented evidence spanning 9 months of lies. Then she made the decision that changed everything. She decided to confront him, but not from emotion, from strategy. She wanted his reaction on the record. She waited until Sunday morning. Richard came downstairs at 8. He made himself an espresso, sat at the kitchen island with the Financial Times spread before him. He was wearing a cashmere robe and the calm expression of a man who believed he was the smartest person in every room. Maggie stood on the other side of the island. She placed her phone face down on the marble counter. The voice memo app was recording. Richard, I know about Sloane. He did not look up from the paper. Know what? 9 months. You have been taking her to every event for 9 months. Hotels, Aspen, the Gala, all of it. Now he looked up. She watched his face move through 3 stages: surprise, calculation, and then a settling, like a man deciding which mask to wear. He chose annoyance. Sloane is a strategic partner. She represents a key investment group. I have explained this. She represents you replacing me. He set down the paper, stood, adjusted his cufflinks. The gesture was slow and deliberate, the way a man straightens his armor before a battle. You want the truth, Margaret? Fine. His voice was even, almost bored. You do not fit. You never did. You are a small-town girl who got lucky, and now you are 7 months pregnant and you look it. Sloane is polished. She went to Wellesley. She knows how to work a room. She knows how to talk to investors without bringing up her father's auto shop. The words landed one by one, like stones dropped into water. She is an asset, he said. He looked at her belly. And you are a liability. The word hung in the air between them. Liability. She gripped the edge of the counter. The marble was cold under her fingers. I am your wife, she said. I am carrying your child. And I am paying for all of it. So maybe instead of interrogating me, you should be thanking me for giving you a life you could never afford on a reporter's salary. He picked up his paper, walked to his office, closed the door. Maggie stood alone in the kitchen. The espresso machine hissed softly. Sunlight came through the windows in long golden bars that fell across the floor like the bars of a cell. She picked up her phone, stopped the recording, saved it, forwarded it to her backup email. Then she sat on the kitchen floor. The tile was cold through her leggings. She pulled her knees up as far as her belly would allow, and she cried. She cried for 10 minutes. She counted. She gave herself that. 10 minutes of grief for the man she thought she married. 10 minutes for the love she thought was real. 10 minutes for the future she had imagined and would never have. Then she wiped her face with the back of her hand, stood up, braced herself against the counter. She picked up her phone and called her mother. It rang twice. Hello? Mom? Her voice cracked on the word. She steadied it. I need help. Diane Sinclair's voice shifted instantly. Not softer, sharper. The voice she used on the bench when testimony did not add up. Tell me everything. Maggie told her everything. Diane Sinclair drove up from Champaign the next morning, 3 hours on Interstate 57, in a 12-year-old Honda Civic with a cracked windshield and a bumper sticker that read Retired Judge, Still Judging. She parked in the underground garage of Richard's building, took the elevator to the 42nd floor, and walked into the penthouse with the expression of a woman conducting an inspection. She stood in the foyer, looked at the chandelier, the marble floors, the art on the walls that Maggie could not name because Richard's decorator had chosen it. Pretty prison, Diane said. They sat at the kitchen table. Maggie laid out everything: the printed screenshots, the calendar discrepancies, the credit card charges, the photos of the second phone, the voice recording. She organized them chronologically, the way she would have organized evidence for a story. Diane listened without interrupting. She picked up each piece of evidence, studied it, set it down. When Maggie finished, Diane was quiet for 30 seconds. Then she spoke. You have done good work. Your instincts are intact. But you need a lawyer before you take another step. I know. Not just any lawyer. You need someone who understands high-asset divorces, someone who is not afraid of Weston money. Do you know anyone? Diane folded her hands on the table. I know a lot of people, Margaret, but most of them would take one look at the Weston name and run. There is one person who might not. He is young. He works at a legal aid nonprofit that handles cases exactly like this. His name is Marcus Webb. Legal aid? Against a billionaire? Marcus Webb graduated top of his class at University of Chicago Law. He had offers from every white shoe firm in the city. He turned them all down because he watched his mother lose everything in a divorce from a man who hid assets in 6 different states. He takes these cases because it is personal for him. Diane pulled out her phone. I will call him today. Marcus Webb came to Diane's hotel room that evening. Not the penthouse. Too risky. If Richard's people saw an unfamiliar man meeting with Maggie, it would trigger alarms. Marcus was 34, tall, lean. He wore a gray suit that was clean but not expensive, and carried a leather bag that was scuffed at the corners. He shook Maggie's hand with a grip that was firm but not performative. Thank you for seeing me, Maggie said. Thank you for documenting everything. Most people in your situation do not have the training to do what you did. He sat at the small desk in the hotel room and spread out Maggie's evidence. He went through each piece slowly. Occasionally, he made a sound, a soft a sharp intake of breath. When he reached the credit card statements, his eyes narrowed. These charges do not match his public schedule. But look at these transfers. He pointed to a series of withdrawals. These are going somewhere specific. Do you see this entity name? Fairchild Consulting Group. Maggie's stomach dropped. Fairchild. That is Sloane's last name. Marcus looked at her. His expression had changed. It was no longer sympathetic. It was sharp, focused. The look of a man who has found what he was looking for. He is not just cheating on you, Maggie. He is funneling marital assets through his mistress's company. If I am right, and I believe I am, he has been systematically moving money out of reachable accounts and into shell entities designed to disappear in a divorce proceeding. He leaned back. This is not just infidelity. This is financial fraud. The room was quiet. Maggie could hear the traffic on the street below, a siren somewhere far away. "What do we do?" she asked. "First, we need documentation. The credit card charges point us in the right direction, but we need corporate records, SEC filings, property transfers, anything with his signature that links him directly to these entities." He paused, looked at her carefully. "Is there any chance you could access his home office?" Maggie thought about the filing cabinet behind Richard's desk, the one with the combination lock. She had seen him open it once. He used their wedding date. Of course he did. The most meaningless date in his life, used as a password to protect his secrets from the woman it was supposed to bind him to. "I can get in," she said. That night, Richard was at a dinner, with Sloane, presumably. Maggie waited until 8:30, then she walked into his office. The room smelled like him. Leather and cedar, and the faint chemical scent of dry-cleaned wool. She went to the filing cabinet, entered the wedding date. The lock clicked open. Inside, 3 drawers. The first held tax documents and insurance policies. The second held bank statements, dozens of them, multiple accounts, transfers highlighted in yellow. The third drawer held what Marcus needed: wire transfer confirmations to Fairchild Consulting Group, corporate registration documents for 2 LLCs in Delaware, a property deed for a condominium in the Cayman Islands held by an entity called SF Trust. SF, Sloane Fairchild. Maggie photographed every page, 67 documents in 45 minutes. Her hands were shaking so badly that some of the photos were blurred. She deleted those and took them again. She sent everything to her backup email and to Marcus. She closed the cabinet, spun the lock, walked to the door. She paused in the hallway. Her heart was hammering. The baby kicked hard, twice, as if to say, "Hurry up." She went to bed, lay in the dark, put both hands on her belly. "Almost there, baby girl," she whispered. "Almost there." Marcus called the next morning at 7:15. His voice was electric. "Maggie, this is bigger than I thought. $38 million. He has moved $38 million into shell companies. Fairchild Consulting, 2 Delaware LLCs, the Cayman Islands Trust, all within the last 10 months, all while you were pregnant." He paused. "This is textbook dissipation of marital assets. When a spouse intentionally moves money to prevent the other spouse from receiving their share in a divorce. A judge will not look kindly on this." "What happens next?" "I file for an emergency protective financial order that freezes his ability to transfer any more assets until the court reviews the situation. I also file a preliminary divorce petition on your behalf, citing financial fraud and infidelity." For the first time in months, Maggie felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. It was small and fragile, like a match struck in a dark room, but it was there. She called Diane. "Marcus says we have a real case. He is filing today. The judge could freeze everything." Diane was quiet for a moment. Then she said what mothers say when they know the storm is not over. "Good, but do not underestimate him, Margaret. Men like Richard do not lose quietly." That night, Maggie slept deeply for the first time in weeks. She dreamed of lilies, her father's garden, the smell of turned earth and clean water. In the dream, she was planting something new. She did not know what it was yet, but the soil was warm. She whispered to her belly before she fell asleep, "We are going to be okay, little one. Mama has got this." She was wrong. She did not have it. Not yet. Not even close. 7 a.m. Tuesday morning, a knock on the penthouse door. Maggie was in the kitchen, making tea. She was wearing sweatpants and one of Richard's old Northwestern sweatshirts that she had claimed months ago because it was the softest thing she owned. Her hair was up. Her feet were swollen. She looked exactly like what she was, a pregnant woman at home on a Tuesday. She opened the door. Two men in dark suits. The taller one held a manila envelope. Margaret Weston? Yes. He handed her the envelope. You have been served. She stared at the envelope. The men left. She closed the door and stood in the foyer, holding the envelope like it might detonate. She opened it. The first page was a legal filing. Weston versus Weston, filed by Alan Kirsch of Kirsch, Bradley, and Associates on behalf of Richard Weston III. She knew the name Alan Kirsch. Everyone in Chicago legal circles knew Alan Kirsch. He was called the Eraser because spouses who faced him walked away with nothing. He had represented three of the wealthiest men in Illinois in their divorces. His record was perfect. His methods were legendary. And his moral compass, according to anyone who had ever faced him in court, had been surgically removed at birth. Maggie read the filing. Each sentence hit harder than the last. The petition claimed that Margaret Sinclair Weston was suffering from severe prenatal anxiety disorder with paranoid ideation and delusional thinking. Attached was a sworn psychiatric evaluation signed by a Dr. Paul Leonard, licensed psychiatrist, who stated that he had conducted a comprehensive in-person assessment of the patient and concluded that she presented a potential risk to herself and her unborn child. Maggie had never met a Dr. Paul Leonard. She had never been to a psychiatric evaluation. She had never been diagnosed with any mental health condition in her life. The evaluation was fabricated, entirely invented, a fiction dressed in medical language and stamped with a doctor's signature. But the filing treated it as fact. And based on this fabricated evaluation, the petition requested three things. 1. Emergency sole custody of the unborn child to be enacted immediately upon birth. 2. Dismissal of Marcus Webb's financial freeze on the grounds that the evidence was obtained through unlawful intrusion into private corporate files, making it inadmissible and potentially criminal. 3. A restraining order limiting Maggie's access to Weston Crown properties, accounts, and personnel. Maggie's hands were shaking so badly the pages rattled. She called Marcus. He answered on the first ring. He had already seen it. His voice was grim. He was ready for us, Maggie. He has been planning this for months, maybe longer. Kirsch does not file reactively. He files preemptively. He was waiting for you to make a move so he could make a bigger one. The psychiatric evaluation is fake. I have never met that doctor. I know, and we will challenge it. But right now, on paper, you have been evaluated by a licensed psychiatrist who says you are a danger to your child. That gives a judge grounds to act, even temporarily. Temporarily is all they need. If I give birth while that order is active, I know. Marcus's voice was tight. We have to move fast. She hung up, sat on the couch, read the filing again, and again. Each time the words became sharper, more real, more monstrous. Then the phone rang. Richard. His voice was calm, almost amused. The voice of a man watching a chess piece fall exactly where he planned. I assume you received the papers. The psychiatric evaluation is a lie, Richard. I have never met that doctor. Dr. Leonard is a respected professional. His assessment is thorough. It is fabricated, and you know it. A pause, then softly, Margaret, you thought you could outmaneuver me? You hired a legal aid attorney and a retired small-town judge, and you thought that would be enough? His voice dropped. Kirsch has 14 witnesses ready to testify that you are unfit. Your building concierge, your dry cleaner, people you have never even noticed. He has been preparing this for 6 months. 6 months. He had been building a case against her for 6 months. 6 months, while she was decorating the nursery, while she was folding tiny clothes. while she was whispering to her belly that everything was going to be fine. "You have nothing, Margaret, and you are about to have even less." He hung up. The first blow landed an hour later. Maggie checked the joint bank account online. The balance had been $212 that morning. It was still $212. But now the account was frozen. A notice on the screen read, "Account activity suspended per legal hold." Richard's financial team had locked the accounts. She could not access a single dollar. She had $212 in cash in her wallet. That was everything she had in the world. The second blow came at 3 in the afternoon. A courier arrived with another legal notice. Kirsch had filed to have Maggie removed from the penthouse within 30 days. The argument was elegant in its cruelty. The penthouse was not marital property. It was held by Weston Crown Realty, LLC, a corporate entity wholly owned by Richard. Maggie was, legally speaking, a guest in her own home, and her welcome had been revoked. She was being evicted, 7 months pregnant, with $212. The third blow came at 6 that evening. Diane called. Her voice was tight, with a fury that Maggie had only heard once before, when a defendant in Diane's courtroom had lied under oath about abusing his children. Maggie. Someone leaked the custody filing to the press. What? It is on every gossip site in Chicago. The headline says, "Weston wife's mental breakdown, billionaire CEO files for custody of unborn child." They are using the psychiatric evaluation. They are quoting it. They are calling you unstable. Maggie turned on her laptop. She typed her own name into a search engine. The results filled the screen, headline after headline, her face pulled from an old Tribune staff photo next to Richard's polished headshot. Billionaire CEO seeks emergency custody of unborn child, citing wife's deteriorating mental health. Sources close to Weston say his wife has been behaving erratically for months. Is the Weston marriage over? Inside the dramatic collapse. And the comments. God, the comments. Gold digger got caught. Now she is playing victim. He should take that baby. She sounds crazy. Team Richard. That man deserves better. Maggie closed the laptop. The screen went dark. She saw her own reflection in it, pale, exhausted, 7 months pregnant and sitting in a $40 million penthouse that she would be thrown out of in 30 days. She had no money, no home lined up, a fabricated psychiatric report labeling her insane, a husband with a $4 billion war chest and the most ruthless divorce attorney in the state. And her name was being dragged through every comment section on the internet. She walked to the nursery, stood in the doorway, looked at the crib she had assembled, the tiny clothes in the drawers, the mobile with the little stars. She wound it up, the lullaby played, tinny and sweet, the kind of melody that promises everything will be all right. She listened until it wound down, then she sank onto the floor and put her hands on her belly. "I have nothing," she whispered. The baby kicked. Maggie closed her eyes, felt her daughter move inside her, and somewhere beneath the fear and the grief and the crushing weight of everything that had just happened, a small voice said something. Not a voice from outside, a voice from inside, from the part of her that had once sat in parking lots with nervous sources and chased stories that powerful men did not want told. The voice said, "You have the truth, and you know how to write." She opened her eyes, wiped her face, stood up. She picked up her phone and called Marcus. "I need to know something. The prenuptial agreement. Is there a confidentiality clause?" Marcus paused. "Yes. Standard bilateral clause. Neither party can publicly discuss the terms of the marriage or the financial arrangements. Bilateral means both sides are bound." "Correct. And if one side breaches it first? If say one side leaks sealed custody filings to the press. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Then the clause is void. A bilateral agreement requires mutual compliance. If one party breaches, the other is released." Maggie smiled. It was the first time she had smiled in 3 days. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a woman who had just found the crack in the wall. "Good," she said. "Remember that." Family, if you think this is where Maggie breaks, you do not know Maggie yet. But before we see what she does next, I need you to hit that like button, because this woman is about to teach a billionaire that the most dangerous person in any room is a mother with nothing left to lose. Stay with me. She moved out of the penthouse on a Saturday. Diane drove up from Champaign with the Honda Civic and a borrowed pickup truck. They loaded Maggie's clothes, her laptop, a box of personal documents, and the contents of the nursery, the crib, the tiny clothes, the Star Mobile. Richard was not home. He had not been home in 4 days. The doorman, Eddie, helped them carry boxes to the truck. He did not make eye contact. When they were done, he held the lobby door open and said quietly, "Good luck, Mrs. Weston." "Sinclair," Maggie said. "It is Sinclair." Diane's apartment was above a bakery on Armitage Avenue in Lincoln Park. The building was old, the stairwell smelled like flour and butter and the faint sweetness of rising dough. The apartment was 2 bedrooms, a galley kitchen, a living room with radiators that clanged at night like someone tapping the pipes with a wrench. Diane had cleared out her sewing room. She had set up the crib against the wall, hung curtains with little daisies, and placed a second-hand rocking chair by the window. On the dresser, she had put a framed photo of Frank Sinclair standing in his garden, holding a bouquet of lilies, grinning at the camera. Maggie sat on the twin bed, 8 months pregnant, $212, a suitcase, a laptop, a backup email full of evidence she could not legally use. "It is not much," Diane said from the doorway. "It is everything," Maggie said, and she meant it. The first week was the hardest. Not because of the apartment or the money or the cramped kitchen where she and Diane bumped elbows making dinner. The hardest part was the internet. The story had legs. The leaked custody filing had turned Maggie into a public character, and the public had decided who she was without asking her. The comments were relentless. Another gold digger crying victim. She trapped a billionaire with a baby, and now she is mad he moved on. Classic. Team Richard, she looks unstable, honestly. If she was so smart, why did she need his money? Each comment was a small wound, individually survivable. Together, they bled. Richard did a television interview on a Thursday morning show. He wore a navy sweater, no tie. He spoke softly. He looked into the camera with the practiced vulnerability of a man who had been coached by a team of publicists. "I just want what is best for our child," he said. "Maggie is going through a very difficult time, and I am trying to give her the space she needs. It is heartbreaking. I love my family, and I will do whatever it takes to protect our baby." The host nodded sympathetically. The audience at home reached for their tissues. That same night, Sloane Fairchild was photographed leaving Richard's penthouse at 11 p.m. High heels. Short dress. A smile for the camera that said, "I belong here now." The tabloids ran both images side by side. The concerned father, the glamorous new woman. The narrative assembled itself like a machine. Maggie's former colleagues at the Tribune would not return her calls. She texted 3 of them. One responded, "Sorry, Mags. Weston's lawyers sent a letter to the paper. Nobody here is allowed to talk to you. I am sorry." She was cut off. From her career, from her contacts, from her money, from her reputation, from every support system she had ever built, and the baby was due in 6 weeks. It was a Tuesday at 2 in the morning when Diane found her. Maggie was standing in the kitchen eating cereal out of the box because she could not sleep, and the baby was pressing on her bladder, and her back ached, and she was scrolling through her phone, reading comment after comment from strangers who hated her for reasons they had invented. Diane came out of her bedroom in a bathrobe. She looked at her daughter, said nothing for a moment. Then she took the cereal box from Maggie's hand, poured herself a handful, and stood beside her in the kitchen, eating it. They stood there together, two women in a small apartment at 2 a.m., eating dry cereal and saying nothing. Then Diane spoke. When I was on the bench, I saw men like Richard every single week. Men who use money like a weapon and courtrooms like a battlefield. They spend more on lawyers in a month than their wives earned in a year, and they win. Often. They win because the system is built for them and because their wives are too tired and too broke and too scared to keep fighting. She set down the cereal box. They win when you stop fighting. So, she turned to her daughter. Are you done? Maggie looked at the counter-théâtre, at her hands, at the crumbs on the linoleum floor. No. Good. Because I spent all day on the phone, and I have 3 things to tell you. She sat down at the kitchen table. Maggie sat across from her. The kitchen light buzzed faintly overhead. Thing 1. Marcus found something. That psychiatrist, Dr. Leonard, who wrote the evaluation claiming you are mentally unfit. Marcus ran his credentials. Leonard's medical license was suspended in 2019 by the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation for falsifying patient records in a malpractice case. He is not legally permitted to conduct psychiatric evaluations. The entire report is fraudulent. Maggie's breath caught. Can Marcus prove Kirsch knew? Not yet. But he can file a motion to have the evaluation thrown out. A suspended doctor cannot submit a valid assessment. That buys us time. Thing 2, I called in a favor. An old colleague from the bench knows a forensic accountant named Grace Holloway. She specializes in hidden marital assets. She traces money that has been moved through shell companies, offshore accounts, corporate structures designed to disappear in a divorce. She works on contingency. She gets paid when you get paid. And she agreed? Diane allowed herself a small smile. I told her the story. She agreed in under 10 minutes. Grace will build the entire financial case using only public records. SEC filings, Delaware corporate registrations, property transfer records. Nothing from your photographs. Clean evidence, legally bulletproof. Thing 3. I spoke with a legal advocacy group called First Voice. They provide emergency support for financially abused spouses. They have offered you a small monthly stipend and a counselor. Maggie looked at her mother. This woman who had driven 3 hours in a 12-year-old Honda, who had given up her sewing room, who was standing in a kitchen at 2 a.m., eating dry cereal and laying out a battle plan with the precision of a general. Mom, do not get emotional on me, Margaret. We have work to do. But Diane's eyes were bright, and she reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand, hard, the way you hold someone you refuse to let drown. The next morning, Maggie made 2 phone calls that would change everything. The first was to Tom Brennan. Tom had been her editor at the Tribune for 3 years, 55 years old, gray hair that he refused to dye, a desk covered in coffee stains and printed pages because he did not trust screens. He was old school in every way. He checked facts. He protected sources. He believed that journalism was supposed to make powerful people uncomfortable. He also owed Maggie. The Alderman story had been the biggest piece the Tribune ran that year. It was Maggie's reporting, but it was Tom who had fought to run it, who had argued with legal, who had put his name on the line. Tom, I know the paper killed the story. I know Weston's lawyers sent a letter, but I need you to hear me out, not as my friend, as a newsman. He sighed, the sound of a man caught between loyalty and self-preservation. I am listening. Weston Crown has funneled $38 million through Sloan Fairchild's consulting company into shell entities. His attorney submitted a fabricated psychiatric evaluation from a doctor whose license was suspended for falsifying records. This is not a gossip story, Tom. This is financial fraud and obstruction of justice. This is the kind of story that wins awards. Long pause. She could hear him tapping his pen against his desk. An old habit. I cannot assign it officially. Weston's lawyers are watching the newsroom. Then do not assign it. Just do not stop your people from looking. That is all I am asking. Another pause. I will see what I can do. The second call was not a call. It was a decision. Maggie sat at her mother's kitchen table with her laptop open and a cup of decaf tea that was growing cold. She stared at the blank screen. Then she started typing. She did not write a legal brief. She did not write a letter to Richard. She did not write an op-ed or a plea for sympathy. She wrote a blog post. The title was simple. When Your Home is a Cage, Understanding Financial Abuse in Marriage. She wrote about what it feels like to have everything. A penthouse, a ring, a name, and still have nothing. No money in your own account. No lease with your name on it. No car you own. No credit history. No way out. She wrote about how wealthy spouses use corporate structures to hide money, how prenuptial agreements can be designed not to protect both parties, but to trap one, how legal intimidation works, how a man with enough money can hire enough lawyers to make truth irrelevant. She did not use names. She did not identify herself. She wrote it anonymously and posted it on a simple WordPress site she built in 20 minutes. She shared it from a throwaway social media account with no profile photo and no bio. The first post got 400 views. She wrote a second post the next day. The Playbook: How Wealthy Spouses Weaponize the Legal System. It got 2,000 views. The third post, The Psychiatrist Who Never Met Me, Fabricated Evaluations and Custody Warfare, got picked up by a women's advocacy organization with 300,000 followers. They shared it with a note that read, "This is more common than you think." Within 2 weeks, the anonymous blog had 90,000 readers. Maggie did not know it yet, but she was building a weapon, one word at a time. Between posts, she returned to the penthouse to collect the rest of her belongings. She had until the end of the month, before the eviction was final. Eddie the doorman let her up. In the elevator, he looked at the floor and said something that stopped her heart. "Ms. Weston, I should tell you something." "What is it, Eddie?" "Miss Fairchild. She has been coming here, regular, since before you moved out." The elevator hummed, the numbers climbed. Maggie's hands went cold. "How regular? Twice a week? Sometimes more." He paused. "She has a key." Sloan Fairchild had a key to the penthouse while Maggie was living there, while Maggie was sleeping 20 feet away, while Maggie was growing a baby in a room down the hall. Maggie walked through the apartment with new eyes. She went to the guest bathroom, the one Richard had claimed as his own. In the vanity drawer, she found a pair of pearl earrings. On the hook behind the door, a silk robe in a size 4. In the cabinet under the sink, a Wellesley travel mug with a lipstick stain on the rim. She photographed everything, sent it to the backup email. Then she stood in the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked exhausted. 8 months pregnant. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair pulled back in a messy knot. No makeup, No emerald gown, no performance. But her eyes were clear, and her hands were steady. In the elevator going down, the baby kicked hard. Twice, sick. I know, Maggie whispered. Mama is angry too. 2 days later, Tom Brennan called. His voice was low. The voice of a man who was saying something he did not want to say on a phone that might not be private. I heard something you need to know. Richard's PR firm is shopping for negative quotes about you. They are offering $10,000 to anyone who will go on record saying you are unstable, manipulative, or a bad mother. $10,000. Former colleagues, neighbors, the barista at the coffee shop you went to, anyone. They want ammunition. Has anyone taken it? Not yet, but money talks, Maggie, especially when people are scared of the man offering it. She hung up and stared at the wall of her mother's apartment. Outside, a siren wailed and faded. The bakery below was closing for the night. She could smell bread, simple, honest, real. This man had $4 billion, and he was spending it to destroy the mother of his child. She put her hand on her belly, felt Lily turn. He does not know who he is dealing with, baby girl. He really does not. And then, for a brief and beautiful moment, the tide turned. It started with Marcus. He filed a motion to challenge the psychiatric evaluation. The hearing was on a Wednesday morning in Cook County Family Court. Marcus presented his evidence methodically. Dr. Paul Leonard's medical license had been suspended in 2019 for falsifying patient records in a malpractice case. The suspension was public record. Leonard was not legally permitted to conduct psychiatric evaluations or submit them to any court or institution. The judge, a woman named Patricia Hernandez, reviewed the documentation. Her expression tightened with each page. When she finished, she removed her reading glasses and looked directly at Richard's attorney. Counsel, are you telling me that your client submitted a psychiatric evaluation authored by a physician whose license has been suspended for 4 years? Richard's attorney, not Kirsch himself, but a junior associate sent to handle what was supposed to be a routine motion, turned visibly pale. Your Honor, my client relied on Dr. Leonard's representations regarding his credentials. Stop. Judge Hernandez held up her hand. A suspended physician cannot submit a valid psychiatric evaluation. This court will not consider fabricated evidence. The evaluation is stricken from the record. Furthermore, I am ordering a full review of Dr. Leonard's involvement in this matter and referring the circumstances to the Cook County State's Attorney for investigation. She looked down at the filing. The emergency custody motion based on this evaluation is vacated. Custody remains with the mother pending further proceedings. Maggie, sitting beside Marcus, exhaled so hard she felt her ribs crack. The baby kicked. Marcus squeezed her arm under the table. Outside the courtroom, Marcus allowed himself a grin. One down. How many more to go? More than I would like. But this was the big one. Without the psych eval, they do not have grounds for emergency custody. That same week, Grace Holloway, the forensic accountant, struck gold. Grace was a meticulous woman in her 40s who wore her hair in a tight bun and spoke in numbers the way other people spoke in words. She had been tracing Richard's money through public records for 3 weeks. SEC filings, Delaware Division of Corporations registrations, Cook County property transfer records. IRS disclosed foreign financial accounts. She called Marcus on a Friday afternoon. I found it. All of it. $38 million through Fairchild Consulting Group. 2 Delaware LLCs, a property in Georgetown registered to SF Trust. It is the same trail your client photographed, but I built it entirely from public filings. Every dollar is traceable. Every transfer has a paper trail. Marcus filed an updated motion for a financial freeze with the new evidence attached. This time, the evidence was legally untouchable, and then the call came that nobody expected. Maggie was eating dinner at Diane's table. Spaghetti with jarred sauce. Simple, warm. The phone rang, an unknown number with a Lake Forest area code. Maggie answered. Margaret. The voice was crisp, controlled, familiar. This is Catherine. Catherine Weston, Richard's mother, the woman who had called to inform Maggie that the Weston family does not have illegitimate children. The woman who had prescribed the wedding like a medication. Catherine, I need to understand something. Is it true that Richard has been moving family assets through that woman's company? Maggie hesitated. Diane was watching from across the table. Maggie put the phone on speaker. Yes, she said. Into offshore accounts. Yes. Silence. Long enough that Maggie checked to see if the call had dropped. Then Catherine spoke. That money includes distributions from the Weston Family Trust. My father-in-law established that trust in 1962. It is the foundation of everything this family has. If those assets are compromised by a federal investigation, every member of this family is exposed. My grandchildren's inheritance, my own accounts, all of it. This was not compassion. Maggie understood that. Catherine did not care about Maggie's pain. She cared about the Weston dynasty. But the dynasty was threatened, and that changed the math. I am not trying to destroy the family, Catherine. I know what you are trying to do, Margaret. You are trying to survive. I respect that more than you realize. She hung up. No goodbye. No warmth. Just the click of old money calculating its next move. 2 days later, Marcus received an anonymous package at his office. No return address. Inside, copies of internal Weston Crown financial memos, signed by Richard, authorizing the transfers to Fairchild Consulting and the Delaware LLCs. There was also a handwritten note on heavy cream-colored paper. The paper stock was embossed with the Weston family crest. The note said simply, "For the record." Catherine had chosen a side, quietly, surgically, the way old money always does. Maggie lay in bed that night at her mother's apartment, 8.5 months, pregnant. The radiator clanged. The bakery below had closed hours ago, but the smell of bread still drifted up through the floorboards. The blog was growing. The legal case was strengthening. The custody threat was gone. Grace had the financial evidence. Catherine had provided the internal documents. Marcus was building something solid. For the first time in months, Maggie allowed herself to believe. I am going to make it, she whispered to the ceiling. She fell asleep with her hands on her belly, feeling Lily kick in slow, steady rhythms, like a heartbeat, like a promise. She should not have believed it. Because the next morning, everything she had built began to collapse. The call came at 7 a.m. Marcus. His voice was wrong, flat, in a way that meant he was controlling something beneath it. They found the blog. Maggie sat up in bed. The room tilted. How? Metadata. A stock photo you used in one of the posts. You had used the same image on your personal Twitter account 3 years ago. Their digital forensics team traced it. That is thin, I know, but Kirsch does not need proof beyond doubt. He needs enough to file a motion, and he has filed. An emergency motion claiming the blog is a coordinated defamation campaign designed to prejudice the court and the public against Richard Weston. Marcus paused. But that is not the worst part. What is the worst part? He is arguing the blog violates the confidentiality clause in your prenuptial agreement. Any public discussion of the marriage, the finances, or Richard's conduct is a breach. He is seeking a gag order and contempt of court charges. contempt of court, fines, possibly jail, for a pregnant woman who wrote anonymously about her own experience. Can he do that? He is Alan Kirsch. He can do whatever a judge allows. And right now, on paper, you signed an agreement that says you will not publicly discuss your marriage. By that afternoon, the second blow landed. Maggie turned on the television and saw her own face on the screen. A tabloid had published a piece titled, "The Secret Blog, Weston Wife's Vendetta, Campaign Exposed." The article identified Maggie as the anonymous blogger. It quoted selectively from her posts, stripping the context and leaving only the anger. It framed the blog as evidence of obsession and instability. A woman consumed by revenge rather than focused on the welfare of her unborn child. The women's advocacy group that had shared her posts sent an email that afternoon, polite, regretful. Given the recent developments, we have decided to remove the shared content from our platforms pending clarification. The sympathy Maggie had been building for 2 weeks evaporated in 12 hours. The comments flipped. The narrative reassembled itself. See, she is crazy. She has been running a secret hate blog. This proves Richard was right to file for custody. Vindictive woman uses the internet to destroy her husband. Classic. Then the third blow. Tom Brennan called. His voice was heavy, the voice of a man delivering a eulogy. The Tribune killed the investigation. Tom? Bishan? Weston's lawyers sent a $50 million defamation threat. Legal pulled the plug this morning. I fought it, Maggie. I argued for 2 hours. I told them this was the biggest financial fraud story in the city. They did not care. They care about liability. He paused. I am sorry. I tried. She hung up. Set the phone on the table. Sat perfectly still. Blog exposed. Gag order pending. Investigation dead. And Marcus called 15 minutes later with one more piece of shrapnel. Kirsch has filed to reinstate the custody motion. He is arguing that the blog demonstrates an unhealthy fixation on vengeance that renders you psychologically unfit for primary custody. The hearing is in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. She was 8.5 months pregnant. She had $212 and a blog that had just been turned into a weapon against her. Everything she had built was rubble. Again. That night, she could not sleep. She lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and listened to the radiator clang and felt the baby move and tried to breathe. Now, here's a question for you, family. Have you ever built something from nothing? Have you ever taken the broken pieces of your life and arranged them into something that looked like hope, and then watched someone with more money and more power and more lawyers kick it all down? If you have, then you know what Maggie felt that night. Not just fear, not just anger, something deeper, the exhaustion of being outgunned, the loneliness of fighting a war that nobody else can see. But here's what I have learned. The moments that define us are not the moments when we are winning. They are the moments when we have every reason to quit and we do not. Stay with me, because Maggie did not quit. The stress hit her body before her mind had time to process it. It happened 5 days later, 3 a.m. She woke to a crushing pain low in her abdomen and wetness on the sheets. Not water, something sharper, something wrong. Mom, she could barely raise her voice. Mom, Diane appeared in the doorway in her bathrobe. She took one look and moved with the speed and precision of a woman who had spent 30 years making decisions under pressure. Hospital. Now. The drive to Northwestern Memorial took 17 minutes. Diane ran 2 red lights. Maggie gripped the door handle with one hand and her belly with the other and tried to breathe through contractions that came faster than they should have. Lily was not due for 4 more weeks. It is too early, Maggie whispered between breaths. Babies come when they come, Diane said. Her voice was calm. Her knuckles on the steering wheel were white. In the emergency room, everything moved fast. Monitors, IV lines, a doctor with kind eyes and quick hands who said, "You are dilated to 6 centimeters. This baby is coming tonight." Between contractions, Maggie's phone buzzed. A text from a number she did not recognize. "You should have stayed quiet, sweetie. Some women just are not built for this world." The message was signed with a single letter. S. Sloan. Maggie showed the phone to Diane. Diane's face went to stone. She took the phone, screenshotted the message, forwarded it to Marcus, and put the phone in her purse. "That woman just handed us evidence on a silver platter," Diane said. "Focus on the baby. I will handle the rest." Marcus called Diane 20 minutes later. She stepped into the hallway. "Kirsch has filed a motion to have a legal representative present at the birth to observe and document the mother's mental state for the custody case." Diane's voice dropped to a register that her former courtroom bailiff would have recognized as the sound just before someone's day got very, very bad. "He wants to put a lawyer in the delivery room." The filing cites concerns about the mother's psychological fitness. Listen to me very carefully. My daughter is in active labor. She is bringing a child into this world. And if Alan Kirsch sends anyone through that door, I will have them arrested for trespassing and file a complaint with every licensing board in the state of Illinois. Do you understand me? Yes, ma'am. The hospital's legal department refused Kirsch's request on the grounds of patient rights and HIPAA regulations. Diane stood outside the delivery room door for the next 3 hours like a sentinel. At 3:47 in the morning, Maggie delivered a baby girl, 5 pounds, 14 ounces, early but healthy. She screamed when she entered the world, loud, furious, alive, a sound that echoed off the hospital walls like a declaration. The nurse placed the baby on Maggie's chest, skin to skin, the warm weight of a brand new life pressed against her heart. Maggie looked down at her daughter, tubes in her own arm, sweat cooling on her face, tears falling from her eyes onto the baby's pink skin. She named her Lily, after the flowers her father grew in the backyard in Champaign, after the thing that grows from dirt and reaches toward the light. "Nobody takes you from me," she whispered into Lily's dark hair. "Nobody." But she had 72 hours. Marcus had obtained an emergency stay on the custody motion. 72 hours before a judge would hear arguments on whether Lily should be removed from her mother. 3 days, a newborn baby, a hospital bed, and the most important fight of her life. Family, I need you to pause with me right here. This woman just gave birth in a hospital room while a billionaire's lawyers tried to walk through the door. She is holding a 5-pound baby girl, and she has 3 days to prove she deserves to keep her. If that does not light a fire in your soul, I do not know what will. Do not skip ahead. Stay right here, because what Maggie does in the next 72 hours will change everything. Hour 1. Maggie was lying in the hospital bed with Lily asleep on her chest when Marcus arrived. He came in quietly, pulled a chair to the bedside, set his bag on the floor. "How do you feel?" "Like I was hit by a truck that I then have to drive." She managed a weak smile. "What do we have? 72 hours? I'm going to use every single one." He laid out the plan while Lily slept, and the monitors beeped, and the hospital hummed its late-night rhythm around them. Step 1 was Dr. Leonard, the fraudulent psychiatrist who had written the evaluation. Marcus had already subpoenaed him. The deposition was scheduled for 8 a.m. "He's going to crack," Marcus said. "Men who fabricate documents for money are not brave men. When he realizes he is facing potential criminal charges, he will talk." Step 2 was the prenuptial confidentiality clause. Kirsch was using it to silence Maggie. But Marcus had a counter-argument. The clause is bilateral. Both parties are bound. Richard breached it first when his team leaked the sealed custody filing to the press. Every gossip site in Chicago ran it. That is a clear breach. Once one party violates a bilateral clause, the clause is void. Your blog is not a violation because there is no valid clause left to violate. Step 3 was the article, the real one, the one Maggie was going to write. Not anonymous this time, Marcus said. Your name, your face, everything on the record. And if the gag order goes through, it will not. I am arguing the confidentiality breach tomorrow morning. If I win, you are free to publish. He stood, looked at Lily. Something softened in his face. She is beautiful. She is a fighter, Maggie said. She came early because she was ready. Marcus smiled, like her mother. He left at midnight. Maggie lay awake. Lily breathed against her chest, tiny and warm and impossibly real. 3 days, baby girl, she whispered. Give Mama 3 days. Hour 8. Dr. Paul Leonard sat across from Marcus in a conference room at the legal aid offices. Leonard was 57 years old, thin, with the nervous energy of a man who had not slept well in weeks. His lawyer, a court-appointed public defender, sat beside him, looking like she wished she were anywhere else. Marcus placed a folder on the table, opened it. Dr. Leonard, your medical license was suspended in 2019 for falsifying patient records. Is that correct? Leonard glanced at his lawyer. She nodded. Yes. And despite that suspension, you signed a psychiatric evaluation of Margaret Sinclair Weston, dated 3 months ago, describing a comprehensive in-person assessment. An assessment that never took place, because you never met Mrs. Weston. Is that correct? Leonard's lawyer leaned forward. My client reserves the right. Your client can reserve whatever he likes, Marcus said calmly. But the Illinois State Bar is investigating Alan Kirsch for submitting this evaluation. The Cook County State's Attorney has been referred this matter by Judge Hernandez, and the medical board is considering permanent revocation of your license. He leaned back. Or, you can tell me the truth, right now, on the record, and we can discuss what cooperation looks like. Leonard stared at the table. His hands were clasped together so tightly, his knuckles were white. Then he broke. Kirsch's office contacted me in March. They said they needed a psychiatric evaluation for a custody case. They said the patient had a history of anxiety and erratic behavior. They provided notes, detailed notes. You never met the patient? No. You wrote the evaluation based on notes provided by the opposing counsel? Yes. How much were you paid? A long pause. $40,000. Marcus let the silence sit. Then he slid a document across the table. Sign this. Every word you just said, in writing. Notarized. Leonard signed. His hand was shaking. Hour 16. Marcus stood before Judge Hernandez again, this time for the gag order hearing. He presented his argument in 6 minutes. The prenuptial confidentiality clause was bilateral. Richard Weston's legal team had leaked sealed custody filings to the press. Multiple publications had reported details from those filings, including the substance of the fabricated psychiatric evaluation. This constituted a clear and documented breach by Mr. Weston. Once one party breaches a bilateral confidentiality agreement, the agreement is void as a matter of law. Mrs. Weston cannot be held in contempt for violating a clause that was already destroyed by her husband's own actions. Judge Hernandez reviewed the evidence, the published articles, the timestamps, the specific details that could only have come from the sealed filing. She ruled from the bench. The gag order request is denied. The confidentiality clause has been rendered void by the respondent's own breach. Mrs. Weston is free to speak. Marcus texted Maggie from the courthouse steps. 2 words. You are free. Hour 24. Maggie sat up in her hospital bed. Lily was asleep in the bassinet beside her. The room was quiet. The hallway lights had dimmed. She opened her laptop, propped it on a pillow, placed her hands on the keyboard, and she wrote the story of her life. She titled it, The Price of Silence, How My Billionaire Husband Tried to Erase Me. She wrote the way she used to write for the Tribune, clean, precise, every sentence earned, every claim supported. She did not write from anger. She wrote from evidence. The shell companies, sourced from SEC filings and Delaware corporate records that Grace Holloway had compiled. The fabricated psychiatric evaluation, sourced from Dr. Leonard's sworn deposition. The paid witness bounty, documented through Tom Brennan's sworn affidavit, confirming the $10,000 offers. The prenuptial trap, the financial isolation, the eviction from her own home, the attempt to take custody of an unborn child. She wrote about Sloane's text message during labor. She included the screenshot. She wrote about the penthouse doorman who told her Sloane had a key, about the pearl earrings and the silk robe in the guest bathroom. She wrote about eating cereal at 2 a.m. in her mother's kitchen because she could not sleep and had $212 to her name. She wrote about the mobile with little stars that plays a lullaby when you wind it up. And she wrote the last paragraph at 4 in the morning with Lily sleeping beside her and the city of Chicago glowing outside the hospital window. I am not writing this for revenge. I am writing this because silence nearly killed me. Because a man with $4 billion tried to erase a woman with 212, and the only weapon she had was the truth. I am a journalist. I was trained to follow the money and tell the story. This is the story, and I am done being silent. She published it at 11 p.m. the following night. Tom Brennan shared it from his personal social media account, not the Tribune's, his own. A quiet act of defiance from a man who had been ordered to stop caring, but could not. Then a former Tribune colleague shared it. Then 2 more. Then 10. Then the women's advocacy group that had pulled her posts reshared the article with a statement. We removed her earlier work under pressure, and we were wrong. We stand with Maggie Sinclair. A legal ethics watchdog organization posted it with analysis of the fabricated evaluation. A CNN producer's assistant flagged it for the morning editorial meeting. By midnight, it had 50,000 views. By 6 a.m., 400,000. By noon, 2.3 million. The story had a life of its own now, and no amount of money could kill it. Courtroom, 1407. Cook County Family Court. Maggie arrived at 8:45 in the morning. She had been out of the hospital for 36 hours. She was wearing a navy blue dress that her mother had bought at a department store on State Street. No designer label, no penthouse glamour. She looked tired. She looked determined. She looked real. Diane walked beside her, carrying Lily in a car seat. Marcus walked on her other side, with a leather bag that was scuffed at the corners and filled with 4 inches of documentation. The gallery was full. Press in the back rows, legal observers, representatives from 2 women's advocacy organizations, a sketch artist from the Tribune, because cameras were not allowed inside. Richard sat across the aisle with his new attorney. Kirsch had been removed from the case 3 days ago, suspended by the Illinois State Bar, pending a full disciplinary hearing for submitting fabricated evidence. Richard's new lawyer was competent but visibly nervous. He had inherited a case that was already on fire. Richard was wearing a $10,000 suit. He sat perfectly still. His jaw was tight. His eyes were empty. He looked like a man who was beginning to understand and that the narrative had slipped out of his hands and was never coming back. And in the gallery, third row, right side, Catherine Weston. She was sitting behind Maggie's table, not next to Maggie, not smiling, just present. She wore a charcoal suit and no expression. She looked at no one. Every reporter in the room noticed. The sketch artist's pencil moved furiously. By the afternoon, the image of Catherine Weston sitting behind her daughter-in-law would be on every news site in Chicago. Richard saw his mother, his face drained of color. He understood what it meant. The dynasty had made its choice, and it had not chosen him. Judge Hernandez entered. The room rose. She sat. They sat. Marcus began. He was methodical, calm. He laid out the case, the way Maggie would have written a story. Lead with the strongest fact. Build with evidence. Close with the undeniable. He presented Dr. Leonard's sworn deposition, $40,000 paid by Kirsch's office for a fabricated psychiatric evaluation of a woman the doctor had never met. He presented Grace Holloway's forensic analysis, $38 million in marital assets funneled through Fairchild Consulting Group into 2 Delaware LLCs and a Cayman Islands trust. Every transfer, documented through SEC filings and public corporate records. He presented the confidentiality clause breach. Sealed custody filings, leaked to the press by Richard's team, published across multiple outlets with specific details that could only have come from the filing itself. He presented Tom Brennan's sworn affidavit. Richard's PR firm had offered $10,000 to anyone willing to go on record with negative statements about Maggie. Tom had documented the outreach, the dollar amount, and the names of 3 people who had been approached. He presented the pattern of isolation, joint accounts frozen, name removed from property, career systematically dismantled, no income, no credit, no professional identity, a woman reduced to $212 and a suitcase. He presented Sloane Fairchild's text message, sent to Maggie during active labor. "You should have stayed quiet, sweetie. Some women just are not built for this world." Entered as evidence of coordinated harassment. Richard's attorney objected 7 times. Judge Hernandez overruled every one, and then Marcus played the recording. He connected his phone to the courtroom's audio system. The room went silent. Richard's voice filled the space. Clear, cold, unmistakable. "You do not fit. You never did. You are a small-town girl who got lucky. Sloane is an asset, and you are a liability." Gosamum. The word liability echoed off the wood-paneled walls. It hung in the air like smoke. In the gallery, someone inhaled sharply. A reporter stopped writing. Richard stared straight ahead. His jaw was locked. His hands were flat on the table. He did not look at Maggie. He could not. Judge Hernandez removed her reading glasses. She set them on the bench. She looked at Richard for a long moment. Then she spoke. "Mr. Weston, in 32 years on this bench, I have presided over thousands of family court cases. I have seen custody disputes fueled by genuine concern, and I have seen them fueled by malice. I have rarely, in all those years, seen a more systematic, calculated, and comprehensive attempt to weaponize the legal system against a spouse." Her voice was steady. It carried the weight of a woman who had spent decades separating lies from truth. A fabricated psychiatric evaluation from a physician whose license was suspended. $40,000 paid for a document designed to take a child from her mother. Financial fraud on a scale that has been referred to the Securities and Exchange Commission. A coordinated media campaign to destroy a woman's reputation. An attempt to place a legal representative in a delivery room. She paused. And throughout all of this, a man who stood before cameras and told the public he simply wanted what was best for his child. She looked directly at Richard. He did not look back. This court does not manage liabilities, Mr. Weston. This court protects children. The ruling took 4 minutes to read. Full legal and physical custody to Margaret Sinclair Weston, effective immediately. Richard Weston III receives supervised visitation only, to be conducted at a court-approved facility, pending completion of a parenting evaluation by a court-appointed psychologist. Emergency forensic audit of all Weston Crown Holdings marital assets, with preliminary findings due in 90 days. Richard ordered to pay retroactive spousal support, child support, and all legal fees incurred by Margaret Weston, including the fees of Marcus Webb's firm. Referral to the Cook County State's Attorney for Criminal Investigation of Alan Kirsch and Dr. Paul Leonard. Referral to the Securities and Exchange Commission for investigation of asset transfers through Fairchild Consulting Group and related entities. Maggie sat perfectly still. She did not cry, did not smile, just breathed. When it was over, she turned to Marcus. "Thank you." He shook his head. "You did this, Maggie. Not me. I just carried the paper." She walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was bright with fluorescent light. Diane was standing by the window, holding Lily. Maggie took her daughter, pressed her face to that tiny warm head, inhaled the impossible sweetness of new baby skin, and then she cried. Not from sadness, not from relief, exactly. From something that does not have a name in English. The feeling of surviving something that was designed to destroy you and coming out the other side, still standing, still whole, still holding your child. The aftermath was precise. Richard Weston III was removed as CEO of Weston Crown Holdings by a unanimous vote of the board of directors, not a leave of absence, removal. The SEC investigation resulted in a $14 million fine for failure to disclose material financial transfers. The forensic audit revealed $42 million in hidden marital property. Under the court's order, Maggie received 60%. $25 million. Richard sold the penthouse, moved to a rental condominium in Scottsdale, Arizona. Alone. No board seat. No social invitations. No cameras. Sloane Fairchild, in a spectacular act of self-destruction, sold her version of events to a tabloid for $200,000. But in the interview, she casually confirmed details of the financial transfers that she could only have known if she had been directly involved. Specific account numbers, specific dates, specific dollar amounts. The SEC added her as a named co-conspirator in the investigation. Richard, in a final irony, sued her for breach of the non-disclosure agreement she had signed when their partnership began. The interview that was supposed to be her payday became the evidence that buried her. Alan Kirsch, the eraser, was permanently disbarred by the Illinois State Bar. 3 of his former clients filed motions to reopen their cases. The reputation he had spent 30 years building was gone in 30 days. Dr. Paul Leonard's medical license was permanently revoked. He was charged with fraud and conspiracy. He pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor to avoid trial and was fined $50,000. His name became a case study in legal ethics courses at 3 Illinois law schools. 6 months later, Maggie stood backstage at the annual Chicago Arts Foundation Gala. She wore a deep emerald gown, the color of things that grow. Her hair was full and natural, swept to one side. She was alone, not lonely. Alone? There is a difference. The master of ceremonies took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder of First Voice and advocate for women's empowerment, Maggie Sinclair." She walked onto the stage, The lights were bright, the crowd was large. She took the microphone and stood in the warmth of a spotlight she had earned. 6 months ago, I was lying in a hospital bed, 36 hours after giving birth, writing the most important story of my life on a laptop balanced on a pillow while my daughter slept beside me. The room was silent, every ear tuned to her voice. A year ago, I had $212, a fabricated psychiatric evaluation with my name on it, a husband who told me I was a liability, and a world that believed him. She looked out at the crowd, faces she did not know, faces that were listening. I am not here tonight because I am brave. I am here because I refused to be erased. She paused. Let the silence hold. And I want every woman in this room to know something. Your voice is not a liability. Your voice is the most valuable thing you own. And no one, no amount of money, no legal threat, no man in a $10,000 suit gets to take it from you. Standing ovation. Immediate. Thunderous. The kind that begins in the chest before it reaches the hands. In the audience, Tom Brennan was on his feet. Marcus Webb stood with his arms crossed and a grin he could not suppress. And Diane Sinclair, third row center, was crying quietly and making no effort to stop. Now, family, before we close this story, I want you to stop and breathe with me, because what you just witnessed was not just a woman winning a court case. It was not just a mother keeping her child. It was a woman who had been systematically erased, who had been told she was worthless, who had been stripped of her money and her name and her reputation and her home, standing up in front of a room full of people and saying, I am still here. Here is what I have learned in all my years of watching people rise and fall. Your value is not determined by who sees you. It is determined by whether you see yourself. Richard did not make Maggie invisible because she was not worthy. He made her invisible because her strength threatened the illusion he was trying to sell. And here's the truth that most people will never tell you. When someone hides you, it is not about your inadequacy. It is about their insecurity. Maggie's power did not come from revenge. It did not come from money or lawyers or viral articles. It came from something far simpler and far more devastating. She stopped shrinking. She remembered who she was, and she wrote the truth. If you have ever been hidden, diminished, or told you are too much or not enough, hear me when I say this. You were never the problem. You were the threat. And the day you stop apologizing for your existence is the day you become unstoppable. Maggie's apartment in Lincoln Park was not a penthouse. It was a 3-bedroom with hardwood floors and big windows that let in the morning light. There were toys on the living room floor and coffee mugs on the counter and a framed photo of Frank Sinclair in his garden on the bookshelf. It was modest. It was warm. It was hers. Lily was 7 months old. She was sitting on a blanket on the floor, grabbing at a stuffed rabbit with the fierce concentration of someone who had important business with that rabbit. Diane was in the kitchen, making coffee, and humming a song she refused to identify. Maggie sat at her desk by the window. Her laptop was open. 3 emails waited on the screen. The first was from a publisher in New York. They wanted to turn her blog into a book. The contract was attached. The advance was generous. The second was from Northwestern University School of Law. They wanted her to deliver a guest lecture on financial abuse and family court systems. The third was from the Chicago Tribune. Tom Brennan had won a regional press award for his coverage of the Weston case, the same award Maggie had won 6 years ago for the Alderman story. The circle was closed. She smiled, opened a blank document on her laptop. The cursor blinked. She typed 5 words. Chapter 1, The Day I Disappeared. Behind her, Lily made a sound. Not a cry, a laugh. That new, unsteady, bubbling baby laugh that sounds like the most honest thing in the world. Maggie turned in her chair, picked her daughter up, held her close. Lily grabbed a fistful of her mother's hair and pulled, which is what 7-month-old babies do when they are happy. Your mama disappeared once, Lily. She kissed her daughter's forehead. But she came back, and nobody is ever going to make us invisible again. She sat back down with Lily on her lap, one hand on the keyboard, one hand on her daughter's back. She started writing. The apartment was quiet. The morning light came through the windows in long golden bars. The coffee maker gurgled. Diane hummed. Lily babbled. And somewhere in the city below, the world kept turning, indifferent and beautiful and full of stories, waiting to be told. Maggie told hers. And it was enough. Family, if this story lit something inside you, if Maggie's fight reminded you of your own, then do not just watch and walk away. Hit that subscribe button and join this family. Like this video if you believe every woman deserves to be seen and heard and valued for exactly who she is. Drop a comment and tell me, what is your emerald dress moment? When did you stop hiding and start fighting? And share this with someone who needs to hear it today, because somebody out there right now is sitting in her own golden cage, thinking she has nothing, and she needs to know she has everything. She just forgot. This has been Billionaire Romance Stories, where every story ends with the courage to begin again. Stay powerful, stay visible, and never ever let anyone tell you that you are a liability. You are the whole story. Keep rising. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.